Good afternoon to all. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we're in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. My name is Ron Naird. I'll be your chairperson this afternoon. And other member is Marcel Larondo, and representing the city of Winnipeg is Jennifer Martins, and the recording secretary is Huda Asas. We'll be hearing application for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested has been described in each application, and we'll limit discussions to those matters. The statements that the applicant and the assessor make at the hearing are sworn testimony, and anybody speaking to these matters must be sworn in. Please be advised that comparisons of assessment properties are not considered evidence by the board. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by City Council and is independent of it. Along with the City Administration, we make our decisions based on the evidence provided at the hearing and issue a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decision in respect to application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to application for exemption from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included in the board's area. In respect to the application or the hearing this afternoon, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with the applicant following the swearing in. It'll be then the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the other applicant may have, and it'll be the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each party will have the opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all evidence about the application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket this afternoon. The session will close after the application has been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decision. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed and recorded and will be part of the public record. I ask our secretary to swear in Ms. Martins and to affirm Mr. Newfield.
Please state your full name. Jennifer Martins. And you swear the evidence you represent is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. If
Please
not,
state
three.
your full name.
Okay.
And you affirm the evidence you represent is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
So, Ms. Martins, the first one we have on the docket is 336 Ward Avenue. So, you can take us through this property.
This is file number 19-2278, roll number 0802098900. The assessed value is $13,300,000. This is an apartment building, building, 3 stories, built in 2013 with 60 suites and 94 outdoor parking spots. On page 2, we have our income value summary. There are 8 one-bedroom suites and 52 two-bedroom suites. We have the average monthly rent per unit at $1,451.49, with a vacancy rate of 2.6% and an expense rate at 34.67% and a capitalization rate at 5%. We have some comparables on page 3, ranging in rent from $1,330 to $1,518. We have our capitalization rate information on page 4 and the supporting evidence for the capitalization rate on page 5. Municipal excerpts on page 6, followed by the income evidence given to the department from the property owner. And on the back page, we have a map of where this is located and a picture, an area of the property. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Newfield, questions?
Page 2, was this done by the model?
Yes, it was.
Those are my questions.
Mr. Larondo,
Any questions?
I don't think I have either, other than, Ms. Martins, you get a chance to visit any of these properties today?
No, I have not visited any of the properties or any of the comparables.
All right. Mr. Newfield, your presentation.
Thank you. Just something that was missed in the draft, it's not relevant really, unless you're keeping records. The previous years of assessed value were dealt with at case management, and I'm just looking for, if we had a resolution on the 2018 assessed value, but I thought they were all dealt with. May not, and it was mutually agreed numbers. So the number we have in there is not the right number, to my knowledge.
Which number is that?
The last year's assessment, 12,141,000.
Oh, that one.
And sometimes the members of the board fixate on the previous year's assessment.
We look at it.
Yeah, that's what the rule came out at, and we've had some case management. Look at this, this is a really big document for case management here. Oh yeah, 18A187, so that was on it. So I just can't find the number, but do you have the number?
No,
No,
I don't.
okay. So.
I'm sure you'll find it after.
Yeah, so it was lower than that. So for this particular year, we're looking at the statements and summarize them on the first page, and you can see that the NOI was fairly consistent between 606 and 613. Expense is fairly consistent, revenue fairly consistent. We've used last year of income, an average of expenses, which isn't much of an average, it's the same number, and an NOI that resembles the higher year, 2017. This differs slightly from the assessor's workup. They're at 664 and we're at 612. That's one difference, the second being the capitalization rate. And we're applying a rate, we're looking at, first of all, page 23, which is the Collier study. And this property would be considered an investment property in Collier's, and a low-rise multifamily ranging between 5.5 and 6.5. So that's our range to begin with. As to where it fits within the range, I would differ slightly from what was presented to you. It suggests 5.5 is more reasonable than 5.75.
So you're gonna change that?
Yes, I am.
Okay. What? 5.5?
And that number is 11,135,509, rounded to 11,136,000. Now, in support of that, there are some capitalization rates of properties that we have on page something. Page 34 and 35. When on page 35 is the subject itself. Now this was based on the construction cost. So when it was built, we had land and costs, and this is a very close client of ours. The projection was 8% at time of construction, and that's based on a vacancy rate and without the need to provide rental discounts. And so targeted at 8 and ended up being 6% over time because the 8% was never achievable. So that's just based on costs alone, it's at 6%. Now, when we first did our analysis, this was 3 years ago, so the absorption has improved a bit. But buildings like this are caught in the free rent trap where they're new, they have high rents. You've got to give a year of free rent every time you get a new tenant, and when that year is up, they often move to the next property and they'll give them free rent. And this is the trap we're in now, so it's a struggle with absorption. We feel stabilization is still 5 years away. The other one to point out is across the street, very similar project. This building had achieved stabilization at time of sale. It's our famous 333 Ward. Colliers sold it. Colliers handled a negotiation between vendor and purchaser. Colliers prepared a pro forma that they both agreed on, 5.5%. That's the real market at the time of transaction. It doesn't matter what other paper anyone tells you. If you want a true rate, you have to be there when the deal gets signed, and that was 5.5. That's my presentation.
I thank you. Ms. Martins, questions of Mr. Newfield?
Sorry, just gonna check one thing. The revenue that you have on the front page,
Yes.
it doesn't match the revenue that we have. No, sorry, wrong number, it's pretty close.
Okay. You're saying 940?
Yeah,
Yeah,
No.
940, 737?
yeah, no, it's
You're right, we used 940, 738.
pretty close,
You got
okay.
us, you got us.
Okay, no, sorry, okay, no questions, thank you.
Marcel?
I don't know what that was all about, so I've got no questions.
Just take a moment. I had something in my brain and I thought it was,
Was it tickle?
yes.
Anything?
It's to you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. I don't think I have any questions. Summation, either party?
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Newfield?
No, I just wish I,
He's looking for
Got
that
it.
number.
got it.
Got it? Okay.
11,029,029, 11029. 5.5% cap rate.
5 point,
Yeah, that was,
5.5.
that was the agreement, through case management.
All right.
So that's actually an increase over the previous year.
Mr. McCubbin,
Yes, sir.
are you giving evidence today?
No, I'm not, I'm just observing.
Just a
Trying to learn.
I have a good
I
teacher.
learned something new.
Well, we heard you in the next room.
Oh, did you? Was I that bad?
They kicked him out of there, so.
I guess so. I will go on to number 2 on the docket, so Ms. Martins, it's 19 St. Michael's Road.
This is file number 194576, roll number 08004064068500. The assessed value is $4,086,000. This is an apartment building, classification 20, residential 2, liability status taxable. 1 building, 2 stories, built in 1968 with 45 suites and 39 outdoor parking spots. If we look on page 2, you can see that there was a sale in August of 2014 with a sworn value of $3,600,000. Since that point, there have been no permits for major improvement. On page 3, we have our income value summary. There are 33 one-bedroom units and 12 two-bedroom units, with an average monthly rent per unit at $812. Vacancy rate of 2.6%, expense rate at 49.29%, and a capitalization rate at 5.3%, gives us our estimated market value at $4,086,000. Page 4, we have our rental comparables, and through to the income and expense on page 8. And then our picture on page 10.
the other.
Thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Newfield?
Page 3, was this all generated from the model?
Yes, it is.
Just out of curiosity, do you have, I was told by an assessor at a previous hearing, he told the whole board, that there were years that were years when the cap rate changed. And I'm just wondering if I was told, we were told 1946, and then the next one after that was about 1974. Do you know what they are?
I don't have the steps in
Okay, that's
my
fine.
head.
And did you investigate the sale?
I took a look at it and I didn't write anything down saying that it was abnormal. So I think what notes I could find were that it was, nothing out of the ordinary was written down in our notes.
Are you relying on it in any way?
Nope, no, because the sale price was significantly lower than the sworn value. And it was from 2014, and that's quite a while ago. And with no permits for work to improve since 2014, or since significantly before then.
So you didn't pull this title though to read what it says on there, did you?
No.
Okay, those are my questions.
Is that it, Mr. Newfield?
Yes.
Okay. Marcel? Any questions?
No, you good?
The cap rates changed from the last one because of the age of the property and location?
I would assume so, yes.
All right, Mr. Newfield, your presentation.
I'm just a little bit torn here because it's a minor point, but the assessor introduced some sale information and I can give you my authorities or simply speak to it without the authorities. I didn't notice it was there.
You do what you're comfortable with.
Okay, we should probably have the authorities. Oh, am I gonna get that?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. This is just in way of rebuttal. The sale, there are two sales listed here. This property was owned by 7 individuals. They had an agreement between them on getting out of the project. There were requirements that had to be filled, shotgun clauses, so to speak, as well, and forced requirements to other people. And I actually did the appraisal on the first one in 2004 to help them sell their 1/7 share. I did not do it on the next one. But what I was just handing out here is the authorities on what sales shouldn't be relied on. The second page, sales settling the estate, basically, sales of doubtful title. It's a partial interest sale, so less reliance on it, and also under definition of market value, which is on the 5th page. There are several definitions of market value, each just giving you a footnote of where it came from, and the sale does not represent market value because there's undue duress in the ownership agreement, and willing buyer, willing seller does not exist. So the number was basically, one guy wants out, or his estate wants out, what do the others want to pay? If they like them, they give them more, if they don't like them, they starve them out. It's not relevant. I just wanted to point that out. So I have inspected this building for the first transfer. The income that we're showing on page 1 is the actual income, and we don't differ much from the assessors, so the main point of contention is capitalization rate. With a 1968 construction and an ownership that's divided like this, you would see more deferred maintenance in it, because when you have 7 groups to satisfy, the lowest common denominator, I guess, is don't spend any money. And that was my observation when I inspected the site, lots of deferred maintenance. So going to our Collier's workup, page 22, we wouldn't necessarily put a property like this in our report. It's unlikely it would make it. But maybe if it were part of a larger portfolio sale, it could hit it, but it would be at the upper end, and that's where we put it, at 6.25%. Given what we know about it, as far as some representative sales, page 33, 1830 Portage. Very similar circumstances. This was owned by a family, and they wanted to divest themselves with it due to one of the family members passing away. And it was on the market for about 3 months, and eventually it was sold to the property manager, who happens to be the same person we're dealing with today. And their decision was made at 6.58%. At time of sale, vendor, purchaser agreed that this is the income they're basing it on, not the income and expense forms, but the income for this sale. Another few sales that are somewhat similar on page 34 is 600 Charles, similar vintage. We appraised that property at time of sale, so 7.04% was the actual cap rate for that. And like the subject, a fair bit of deferred maintenance was inherited by the purchaser. That's my presentation.
I thank you. Ms. Martins?
Just one quick question about the sale. Even though it was between related parties, was there a sworn value given to, submitted to like land titles when the sale was done?
Yeah, well, that's what they
Okay.
have to do, is they would submit it to titles, and that's why if you pull the title, you would see on it that Mr. So-and-so owning a 1/7 undivided interest sells to Mr. So-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, and they would list the price for his share, and then they would list, they have to have a sworn value for the entire project.
Okay, perfect. And for these cap rates, are the closing costs included in the?
No,
Nope.
not the ones I quoted you, no, we haven't included them. They're done the same way that we're presenting today, same style, same format.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Laurando?
Have you walked through either of your 2 buildings that you are using for the cap rate?
Yes, at some point.
1830,
At some point I have, yes.
are they well maintained, or are they?
No, Charles, as I mentioned, is probably similar in condition to St. Michael, in that there wasn't a lot of spending happening to it, and it was sold. Our inspection showed some deferred maintenance that had to be addressed, and that's typical of what I've observed in St. Michael. As for 1830 Portage, there were some heavy expenses in the last 2 years leading up to the sale. At that point in time, the family had made the decision to put it in the market, and they were trying to, make it look better for sale. And so the revenue and the expenses would have been higher the 2 years prior to sale, but then at that point, they had done what they wanted to do, and they did windows, and then they put it on the market, and that's the price they got. Now, after purchase, though, the vendor discovered some more issues that he had to deal with, which the purchaser discovered, which he was not fully aware of at sale. That's typical in apartments. There's gonna be, you can't get into all the units, and you get into a unit after somebody vacates, and you say, oh, yeah, we kinda underestimated our rental costs here.
There's nothing anything else that's sold that's more comparable with the size of this unit?
In terms of a 45 unit,
I don't see anything in here.
well, the one on Notre Dame, which is a downtown high-rise, had a similar number of units, but that's a different style of building. It's a historic building that was renovated. On page 34, we have two properties that sold together, a total of 34 units, had been recently renovated. 6.62% was the actual cap rate that decided between vendor and purchaser. I have the details in file. What we're looking for is when the meeting of the minds happened for the sale, is what was the income that was debated, and our company, when they handle the transaction, know what that number is. I think 6 1/4 is probably a touch on the aggressive side on a sight unseen. I think we would need a physical inspection to see if that would hold up. It might be higher. There may be costs required after purchase, which then come off price. But I haven't been there since my inspection.
Is your, on the, city supplied the sheets for their revenue, their net operating was 223,872.
Yeah, that was in 17.
Yeah,
And that was a year, as you can see on our workup page 1, we did use the income from that year, and we averaged expenses from all 3 years, because expenses go up and down. So a 3-year expense average is what we do. We had considered looking for a longer period, but then you have to make an adjustment for time on costs. So it seems to be the fairest amount. I believe it's just a variance in repairs and maintenance. Yes, that's correct. The subject year was, last year was 56,000, lower than a previous year of 63,000. So expenses do go up and down, and an investor looks at a moving average.
how much are you getting per door then on your expenses?
On the current one, 56, 1244, which is low average.
I got no further questions, Mr. Chair.
All right. So, Mr. Newfield, your NOIs are pretty close to the same, it's just a matter of cap rate?
That's correct.
Yes.
And was this property ever appealed before,
Yes, last year.
last year? And I noticed, I guess, in your presentation, you have the old assessment from the previous.
That is correct.
So was that an agreement or a settlement or anything like that, or what happened there?
No,
Board
somebody-
decision?
Yes. Somebody messed my files up here, they're not in order. It's usually actual income in 6 1/4, that was a previous year. I believe it was a decision. Then I have another one, actual income cap rate of 6%, another year. I believe it was a board decision, but
All right.
I don't have it, but
Okay.
I'm out of order here.
Okay. Okay. That takes a summation on either party.
No, thank you.
Okay. We'll go to the next one on the docket, number 3. Whenever you're ready, Ms. Parsons, it's Victory Place, number 9.
This is file number 194342, roll number 080000904500. The assessed value is $1,472,000. This is one building, 2 stories. Actual year built is 1955 and effective year built is 1979. There's 11 suites and 5 outdoor parking spots. Page 2. We have 4 bachelor suites and 7 one-bedroom, with average monthly rent per unit being $817.94. The vacancy rate at 1.8%, and expense rate at 41.69%, with a capitalization rate at 4.2. We have comparable rents ranging from $729 to $871. And on page 7, we have the start of their income and expense report, and it shows that their gross potential suite income is $123,900, which is somewhat above what we have. And we have some pictures on the back showing where this is located. Over on St. Mary's, just north of Sherwood Place. And there's a picture. Thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Newfield.
On page 2, was this all generated from the modeling?
Yes, it was.
Okay. And page 1, you are showing that the effective year was changed from the actual year. Do you know when and how that was done?
No, I wasn't able to find the notes on that.
So you haven't inspected this property?
No, I have not.
The rate capitalization selected at 4.2%. I'm just looking at your page 4 capitalization rates. So this would be below the 20th percentile?
Yes, it would. It would be reflective of someone putting, instead of average qualities, of somebody putting higher than average quality conditioning.
Okay. And does the application of quality and condition improve its ability to get higher rents every year?
Not necessarily, well,
I mean, the first year, yes, but after that and renewal, does it help them get more every year?
not every year.
No. Okay. I noticed that on this yes, page 5, may I assume that we can trust this to say these rates are not meant to be comparable specific to the subject property?
Yes, that's safe to assume.
Well, in the multifamily rates, just a question here is that an assessor at a previous hearing stated that 394 Talbot and 285 Maxwell were pre-renovation projects. Is that correct to your knowledge?
I believe so, yes.
So those, of course, capitalized quite low. Now, is a pre-renovation project the same highest and best use as a apartment?
Sorry, can you say that one more time?
Is a project the same highest and best use as an ongoing investment income property?
No.
Okay, and you are assessing this property as an ongoing multifamily investment property, is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rondeau.
So what puts it in the better than average condition?
I don't have any of the notes with me, but if one of my coworkers found that there had been improvements, then that might be what influenced the change in effective year and also an increase in the condition or the quality at the time.
1979 is still old.
Well, 1979 is still old.
I just don't think I've seen a 4.2 on a 1979 before.
Is that a question?
Yeah. That's-
We have a low of 4% for our cap rates, so there's a wide range of cap rates.
And yet if you go to the Colliers and the CBRE and Cushman, the lowest they got's a 5 to a high of 6 on low rise. Would this be, you'd be looking at it being an A, I guess, in the condition it's in, right?
I didn't get to inspect it, so I'm not exactly sure what influenced the change.
Okay. On to you.
Thank you.
Chair.
Ms. Martin, the effective age jumped 24 years.
Yes.
So how do you account for that?
That would have been some type of major renovation or overhaul or of some sort.
So any work permits or anything like that, or any permits taken out?
Not that I have with
Okay.
me, but I'm sure that there were.
Yeah.
I just don't have them.
The overall average increase from the last assessment to, do you have those numbers at all? A general sort of feeling?
I believe it was approximately 20%.
And it would vary according to area, et cetera, but
Yes.
generally 20.
Roughly, a very rough approximation, 20%.
All right. Mr. Newfield, your presentation.
I did not do this workup.
No, you're
Well, I'm sure you can stumble your way through.
No, there's an error on it. It said
21?
renovations were done recently, well, recently was 2013. What was causing our people some concerns was a repair and maintenance number at $784 a unit, and a tax amount that hadn't been revised upward to reflect the actual taxes.
Okay, but basically, I'm looking at your presentation, and your
Right.
NOIs are exactly the same.
Well, that's because they should have been a bit different, because
Yeah.
when they
Okay.
see a building under renovation, they looked up the assessment department's number, and it's higher than that. And I'll tell you the exact amount that it's higher in.
Yeah, but we can only go, Mr. Newfield, according to the information that we have in front of
I
us.
have an obligation
corrected.
to get you more time here. The actual NOI I would have put in is 66,213. The cap rate I'm using is 6.62%, and that's no coincidence. Page,
It looks like 10%.
no, it was page 35, 26 and 45 Hargrave. So these were two 17-unit blocks built in 1959, renovated in 2011, sold at 6.62%. The vendor was the same person who renovated and sold this block. And that's the number I would use, 6.62%. Yeah, that works up to $1 million. Oh, you're right. Now, as to it, relationship to last year, yeah, I don't know. It's really rogue board members. One of them sitting in front of me, but that's just what happened. It was the applicant's net operating income, 5.5% was last year. The previous year, it was dealing with renovation, applicant's net income and 5.5%. That's what I got here. And in any event, the Hargrave sales are the clearest example. It's below interest as a investment property unless it were sold as part of a portfolio, in which case it might command a more attractive rate. So our rates, Collier's rates for it, which I'd suggest are too good for this property, would say 5.5 to 6.5%. That's on page 23. That's my presentation.
Can you give us a final figure?
$1 million.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Ms. Martins?
Would you say that there's anything different with the building over the past year that would suggest there should be a decrease in value?
No, no, and of course not. It's the same as it was last year, and it just, board rulings are not required to be consistent, unless you're, where's the microphone mark on? They are represented by the facts that are put in front of the board. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Laurando?
I guess roughly in 2013, they put about $1 million into the building?
Where are you reading that?
Using the numbers you said.
No. They put in that much? No. I probably even have the numbers.
I might be a little high, I might have to adjust it.
Well, yeah. I have the statements here. No, I didn't get the budget here. I got ongoing costs. Legal and accounting. Oh, here we go. Yeah, it's not much. 62,000, 37,000.
What was it, 784 per unit?
Oh, no, that's what they're spending today, 784 per unit. And I don't think that that's an appropriate number to use. They're just down because they had renovations, and an investor is not gonna budget 784,000 on the sale. Our company would put in a minimum of $1,200 a unit to stabilize, because, you know, very often you get the guy who's putting it up for sale, and he knows he's putting it up for sale, so for a year before he spends, as last year shows, oh, no repairs and maintenance, I wanna show a good statement. Well, we come in and when we value it for brokerage for sale, and we put in a number if they don't have a number, because you need a number there. And so I adjusted 784 to 1,200 for the new number I gave you.
Well, you only said it was 90.
Yeah, no, I don't have construction costs. The only one I saw is $100,000 in 2014.
But you said the construction was done in 2013.
Well, right, the statement was a period prepared June 2014, period ending December 31st, 2013.
And you walked through this building?
I was through it quite some time ago.
Not since the renovation.
I think it was during the renovation period. I think I'm not sure if the costs were absorbed through another, or stated in another project. I can tell you that I do have income from the previous years, and that gives me an idea of the scope of work. And it jumped from 100 to 120. So that's not a ton of that's not a big renovation. That's an above guideline. That's not a forgiveness.
Okay, I've got no further questions, Mr.
I thank you. Mr. Neufeld, would the property suffer from any obsolescence in regards to the parking, lack of parking?
Well, I didn't get to that, but it suffers from 3 points of obsolescence. Being in the suburbs, parking, of course, is something. It really stops you from achieving the higher rents in your neighborhood. Bachelor units and one-bedroom units is the lower end of the scale, so those are both negatives. And then lastly, the number of units, it's only 10 units. So the risk level there is when you're dealing with expenses that are fixed rather than variable expenses, that they tend to be higher. And even issues like utilities, where utilities are based on the amount of envelope you expose to the outside, it's a higher percentage in a smaller building. And so your utilities are slightly higher. But those factors would suggest that, which is why I had rather liked the example I'd shown you in the Hargrave, which were two 17-unit blocks.
Summation, either party?
No, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Neufeld? You okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
I'm better now.
Item number 4.
I prefer people watching.
Ms. Martins?
I'm there.
This is file number 194595. Roll number 12031026000. The assessed value is $337,000. This is an apartment building, one building, 2 stories, built in 1964, 4 suites, and 4 outdoor parking spots. Income summary on page 2. 4 one-bedroom units, average monthly rent per unit is $805.23. 10% on vacancy, 53.48% for expense rate, and 4.8 on cap. We have some examples of comparable rents. And the income and expense is starting on page 7, with some photos on page 9 showing the map, but this is on Forden, between Cambridge and Third South. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld? Questions?
Page 2,
Yes,
this is all model generated.
yes it is.
And does your model do anything for units, counts in buildings, if there's a difference in the unit counts? In this case, we have 4.
Yes, size.
So what does it do for size?
Um,
Gives you a lower cap rate or a higher cap rate?
A smaller building would be easier to sell. In some ways would have less risk. It's a lower price point. There's more, a bigger audience for it, whereas a very large building would have a more limited.
So all things considered, if this were 40 units instead of 4, the parameters would indicate
Increase in cap.
Sorry about that. Okay, that was my question, thank you.
Thank you.
Marcel?
No, I'm good.
I'm okay. Mr. Duffield, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Ultimately, what the assessor has said bears some part of the truth in that a small building is easier to sell and would attract more interest because anyone could come up with $300,000, well, except the kids, to buy an apartment. The problem lies in the method of valuation. That's not the income approach. That's direct comparison approach, or that's personal reasons. And the most common buyer of properties like this is somebody who buys it, occupies the unit themselves, maybe one for their friend or their mother, and use the rest for mortgage helpers. But that's not the income approach. And if we're going to value this in the income approach, then we have to deal with income and all the elements that go with it. As you can see from the statements, they're not good. And the dollar difference between our NOIs is small, but the percentage difference is large. And the biggest reason is the expense side. And in the earlier testimony, I told you that a smaller building has a higher expense ratio, and that's because of fixed costs. In this case, 62% is the actual expense ratio that a smaller building incurs. And that's support for what I said earlier, as well as the reality of this property. So this is the income, done an income approach, this is what we have to live with. As for a cap rate, absolutely not an investment property, no question there, but we're supposed to treat it like a war one, so we've applied a rate of 6.5%, which is an estimate from our review of cap rates, hypothetical application. As I said, properties like this, for any certified appraiser to treat it as an income would require a degree of due diligence that you won't see at the Board of Revision. So our people just put a 6.5% rate, and we've quoted you several examples today of smaller properties, as well as the Collier study, which this property doesn't fit, and that's our presentation.
I thank you. Ms. Martins?
No questions.
Oh, sorry, there was one thing I was going to point out, is that the actual NOI is much, much lower. And you can see that the expense ratio is huge. It's $2,800 a door. We actually adjusted that down to $1,200 in order to present this. So the actual expense ratio is about 75%. Highlighting our issue and showing a consistency in our valuation procedures as well. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Ms. Martins?
I'm good, thank you.
Sorry.
What kind of rents, were you,
Yeah.
I'm done.
what kind of
Yeah.
rents were you looking at on this place then, by the month per unit?
Yeah, it's, well, 9,000 a door,
Yeah.
so that's, there's obviously a shortfall between the list rents and the actual achievement rents, which would be vacancy. Another problem with a small block is if you have one unit down for 1 month, that's all by itself is a 7% no. 4 times 12, 48.
12.5.
Yeah, whatever. Right away, it's a big vacancy the minute you lose just one suite, and that's what's showing here, why it's a poor investment on the investment side as well.
showing his rent at $941 to $978?
Yes. So the potential income is 47.5 with
Yeah.
parking, and they're achieving 37. So that's a missing $10,000, which is easily just a couple of vacancies takes you down. And also point out that page, the rents that they have listed are always their RTB registrations, not their actual achieved rents.
But this is a pretty good location, isn't it, on
Oh,
Boardroom?
I tried to buy it. Yeah, because when my mother wanted a place, I asked them if they'd sell it to me.
And you said he wanted 600,000, right?
Not quite, but no, they've owned the property for, they probably built it, and they've been there for 100 years, they're not in the selling business. So, no, I was gonna put my mother in one, and then my sister's gonna let her live free in the other to look after my mother, so that my duties were discharged as a good son, and then I'd have a little bit of rent to cover my costs. It was a great idea. And I have other properties I'm representing for them where the fourplex is done on a per square foot basis, which I don't know, you know, that has another problem, because you have a rental property, so.
But it's like a fourplex.
Yeah. Well, it depends on the way it was made. The other fourplex I'm speaking of was townhouse style, so everybody had a basement, first floor, second floor. This one is set up apartment style. That was the physical difference.
To you, Mr. Chair.
I thank you. Mr. Newfield, just one question. Your expense ratio is 62%.
Yes.
Do you know offhand what the vacancy rate was? Like the city's at 10, so I know we sort of talked about it.
Yeah, I don't have the precise vacancy rate
Yeah.
because I think some
By
of
the way,
it,
you're
some of
roughly
it's,
around the same?
yeah, I think some of that's real vacancy and some is the difference between the RTD listing and the achieved rate. That degree of financial information I do not have.
Okay. Summation, either party?
No, thank you.
Okay.
The actual expense ratio is 82.1%. And we've modified it, adjusted it to 62% to match market costs on renovation. And in doing so, of course, we're understating the income, so the cap rate has to absorb the difference. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Item number 5, Ms. Martins, whenever you're ready.
Okay, this is file number 192115, roll number 0607059800. Assessed value is at,
Isn't there an issue here?
We're on the wrong.
nope,
Got a burden of proof on it.
We're supposed to be doing 19,
oh, 409, I'm sorry.
4575.
Because we're working ahead of myself.
Okay.
This is file number 194575, roll number 0800302420, 409 St. Anne's Road. And there is a request for non-cooperation. If we look on,
Are you challenging it, Rocky? Rocky, are you challenging it?
I don't have the authority to refuse to challenge it. I'll just let the board make it. In other words,
Continue then. I'm sorry, Mr.
That's
Chair.
okay.
I'm required to have the board make a decision.
Okay.
on page 8, there's the envelope and the tracking details, and page 9 is a copy of the information that was put in the envelope.
Mr. Newfield, your response?
Just a couple, one or two questions. You have the listing of, oh, here we go, page 2. So you're showing that a response has been received. 2 years have been missed, is that correct?
Yes, for
Okay.
17 and for 18.
And to your knowledge, was the post-reference one received?
I don't know.
Those are my questions.
Mr. LaRondo, any questions in regards to,
Not yet, I'll see what Mr. Newfield has to tell us.
okay. Mr. Newfield, your explanation?
As you can see on page 3, we do have the previous period was submitted, and that where it says 2016, that was looks kind of fuzzy at the bottom of page 3. April 29th was written on top, but that was the original stamp.
What,
It
whereabouts?
says 2019.
Yeah, I know, but underneath it, it says 16, I'm just gonna ask you to disregard it.
Okay, okay.
In my version, that was whited out, and so the photocopier took it out. So the point is that we do have, on the surface, 2 missing years. And my client is the owner. They have this managed though by another company who sent in 100 of these, and we haven't found through their files whether or not we can prove that it was missed in the pile that was sent in, and that's what I was instructed to say.
All right.
And I don't know why, but I have a Bible verse written here.
The Bible what?
A Bible verse.
Probably,
Curious.
Probably not appropriate.
probably not.
Any questions, Ms. Martin, that arising from Mr. Newfield's?
No.
Anything further, Mr.?
No.
Okay, I think we'll have you leave the room, and we'll turn the cameras off. We'll call the hearing back to order,
Oh, shut.
and in regards to 409 St. Anne's Road, it'll be granted to the city, the non-co-op. So, Mr. Newfield, your presentation.
Thank you. And I had nothing to say about that. I just thought it was just like, I'm just looking at our work up here, and we didn't have the income either. So we're rather limited as to what we could actually bring forward to you. The income we brought forward was from the following year, so I know you can't rely on that. I'm gonna just leave myself to discuss the capitalization rate and the evidence we've provided on capitalization rates is, again, page 23, the Collier's study, and reminding you again that these rates aren't taken from the internet. They're not taken from cards that represent income from a year prior. They are done at time of sale. Earlier this year, I had got access to the Collier's system, which tracks cap rates across Canada, and had a chance to see the actual hard data that went into this. And I appreciate being able to do that because these numbers stood up across Canada. We could see what property was being referred to, which property wasn't being relied on, and again, they're presented by brokers who are there doing the deal and reporting what the people agreed at. So these are good numbers. Now, in this case, we would go 5.5 to 6.5 as generally for a suburban low-rise. This is on the edge of good properties. One reason being the number of units is unless we're part of a portfolio, really low interest in the investment market. Parking is below the required need of 11 units, it's at 7. So, as you may know, the code is 1.4 stalls per unit, which would indicate a need for 15 parking stalls. This is illegal, non-conforming use. However, the concept behind having those stalls is that your tenants have a place to park and guests have a place to park, and if you have parking, you can get more rent. Code is a nice ruler, but the marketplace will also dictate lack of parking. Now, certain neighborhoods, lack of parking is part of the makeup of the neighborhood, and in that case, you can look at neighborhood sales to see what impact it may or may not have. In this case, it is a requirement. So the cap rates I've already discussed, they support what we've applied here. So a rate we would request that the assessor's rate of 5.1% be changed to a rate of 6.5%. Which is a value of $596,262, rounded to 596,000.
Are you sure?
No.
He's using the city's number.
Well, I'm using the
Okay.
city's number. No, I said I can't use my number
Oh,
because
okay.
it's post-reference, right?
Okay.
So next year when we don't have a penalty.
That's better.
I just, in case you're sitting in this next year, I'm sure I will, I'm coming in lower next year.
What was the rate, what was the cap again?
6.5.
6.5, okay, thank you. Okay. Questions, Ms. Parton?
No, thank you.
Okay, I thank you. Mr. Laurando?
That's how you say it. No,
Laurando.
I've got no questions,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
I have none either. Ms. Martins, the floor is yours.
Okay. We have an assessed value of $760,000 with actual year built at 1957 with 11 suites and 10 outdoor parking spots. These suites are all one bedroom with an average monthly rent of $648.01. We've put a 2.6% vacancy, 53.48% expense rate, and 5.1% cap to give us the $760,000. On the back page, there's an overhead picture and a map. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Newfield, questions?
Just on page 3, it's all done with the model?
Yes, Des?
Thank you.
Marcel,
None.
summation either party?
No, thank you.
Okay, let's go on to item number 6. Whenever you're ready, Ms. Parton.
This one is file number 192115, roll number 0607059800. Assessed value is $1,166,000. This is an apartment building, one building, 2 stories, built in 1968 with 14 suites and 12 parking spots. We have sale history on this one, being in 2015 at $1,250,000. We have 2 bachelor units, 12 one-bedroom, giving us our 14 units with an average monthly rent at $682.70. 1.8% vacancy, 49.29% expense rate, and 4.9% capitalization rate. We have rent comparables on page 4, ranging from $669 to $736. And the income expense information on page 8 through 10. and picture and map on page 11. Thank you.
Mr. Newfield, questions?
Page 3, is this generated by the model?
Yes, it is.
Those are my questions, thank you.
Marcel?
No.
The rate of 4.9, cap rate?
Yes.
It seems kind of low for a building that was 1968.
I think the model takes into account the age, the quality, condition, area.
So I see that there is a financial statement in here,
Yes.
okay? And it ends December 31st, 2017. So total revenue, 125,000, and you're at 114. So how do you get the difference of $11,000?
Ours is model generated,
Yeah,
and it doesn't go by actuals.
okay. So the fact that I don't see anything, it's got a, it should be higher, if anything. I mean, at 129, so, you know, that's $15,000 difference there, so, but, you know, you hang your hat on the model and not site-specific?
Well, we have how many thousands of buildings, and
Mhm.
it's not realistic to say that I'm going to go to each individual I&E and do a site-specific evaluation assessment on each. We do use computer-assisted master pricing.
So, you know, I guess, you know, we must have a little discussion for this, mainly because if you ask for questionnaires to be completed,
Yes.
and supposedly, I guess you use them.
Yes, we do. We take the information from
But-
questionnaires
but
and put them into
don't
the
you,
computer.
when you, yeah, but don't you, when you do the model, don't you look at the questionnaire at that point? I mean, you
But
know,
you see, if you look on page 4,
yeah,
we use the questionnaires to come up with our comparables. We use the questionnaires to enter in the information so that we have a basis for evaluating what the rents should be, what the expenses are, what type of vacancy rates there are in the city, so that we have something to base our mass appraisal on, and we have comparables to work with. If we don't get, the mailer isn't so that I can say, okay, well, I'm gonna take this mailer and put that exact amount on this property,
Well,
and that exact amount on this
you'll
property.
take it into consideration.
We take it into consideration,
Okay.
and we apply it into, to find our comparables, to see what is reasonable and what's
Mhm.
actually happening in the market. By the same token, I also don't take a property that says that if this one had come in and said that it had half of the amount of rent, I wouldn't cut the value based on that. It's not,
No.
it's not the
No.
same person looking
No.
at the two,
No.
you know what I mean?
So you defend the model each and every time.
Yes. Well, that That being said, if we come to a hearing and there's a strong reason to take a look at the income and say, okay, well, there's a huge difference in this, we can look site specific. That's what this process is for.
Well, we haven't gotten to Mr. Newfield's presentation, so I can only look at the city's presentation. But I guess you refined the cap rate and, I'm not used to sort of that. It's, I'm used to doing a whole percentage or a quarter percentage, so, and that's like fine tuning it, eh?
Well, they've decided to try this out with the model and see how it works with, instead of jumping, because a quarter point can be a large difference in value.
And there was a sale on the property in 2015, eh?
Yes.
Did you look at a cap rate at that time?
No, I didn't have time to do a full cap rate analysis on the sale.
All right, I think you,
I might have a question.
Yep.
Now that
Okay.
you've gotten into,
I
you're doing with
am
that.
going to do one.
because with them talking about their model here, so do you guys tweak this model every year,
Well, every reassessment,
or who does the tweaking of it?
the modelers,
The modelers, or any of them IT people, or?
don't know what all of their backgrounds are. But they're all valuation staff.
So their evaluation staff, what are they changing, what schedules are they changing in the actual program? Or are they just inserting these numbers?
I don't believe that they're taking the actual INEs and inserting all of the INEs
Oh, they're not?
for all of the individual properties, because that would be cost prohibitive.
But you said that's why you need the information.
We enter the information in so that we can use it as comparables. They don't enter all of the numbers into the model. They enter all of the numbers into our computer system so that we can have comparables and,
So are your modelers more data inputters?
no. We have data inputters.
Oh, so the data inputters put the information into the model.
No.
Who's cross-checking their work? How's the information getting into the model then?
We put the information into the system that we have to gather the information, and then the modelers look at the information from that system, and they work on the model. Makes sense? Remember, I'm not a modeler.
No, it's just like, because I see what your modelers sent you here with for evidence. And it's, the reason I see it say it is because it comes at every meeting. And it's got the same properties on it over and over and over again. Well, we've got a big city. Seeing as they're creating these models, could they not create us a model for the multifamilies within the zones that you're dealing with?
Are you talking about the cap rate evidence?
Yeah.
The cap rate evidence was put together by each individual section. The modelers worked at the cap rates. Why are you giving me a hard time today?
I'm trying to understand it, that's all. Wouldn't it be good for us to actually understand this? How you came up with the numbers?
And the cap rate evidence was not done within the model. The cap rate evidence was taken as the valuation staff took a look at actual sales that we have that are within what the model presents.
I don't know, I'm trying real hard to figure this out, Mr. Chair.
Yes,
We'll have a discussion after you and I.
yes.
Let's
Just,
move on.
just to, looking at a cap rate based on the old sale, based at, the NOI that we have now,
I,
gives you 4.56. So if you increase the NOI, because rents do go up,
yes,
you should be fairly close to the modeler's figure, 4.9.
Well, I hadn't even looked at the sale. Now you've opened up a whole new box for me. Yeah, I wonder what that sale would have driven for NOI, for
Well,
cap rate.
that's what I did,
Yeah, what cap rate did you come up with?
4.56.
No. That's not how you do it, though. But it's not my turn.
It's a ballpark figure. It's a ballpark figure. NOI over the sale price gives you the cap rate.
Because that's how it was sold for.
Pardon?
We're talking about a difference in highest and best uses at this point in time. It's not what it was sold for, it's
No, but-
sold income.
That could have been the cap rate when it was sold, though.
But that's not a cap rate, though.
Well, that's
You
what
can't
you
why
would,
not?
Right.
that's what you would take to the bank, right?
No, because it's, first of all, yeah, no, you wouldn't take it to the bank, you would take projected income to the bank with costs. And secondly, the old income is the highest and best use of a project, not of a finished apartment. So there is another way of doing it, and the numbers are all in front of you.
We're here for to
But it's not my
listen.
turn.
Well, we will be, eventually. I'm done, Mr. Chair. I'm ready to hear his version.
I'm done, I'm
Then we
done.
can ask him some-
Mr. Newfield, the floor is yours, and maybe you could just tell us about,
Okay. Well,
I know it's an old sale,
right. no,
which is 15.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, and this is ground that people have muddied up for so long. If you have a cap rate of, for in-place income, the party selling it, the party buying it, both know that that's the number. And when I tell you the brokers get together, everybody knows what the number is. And when you have a renovation project, the vendor doesn't care what the number is. So half of the equation is missing, half of it, only the purchaser does. And the purchaser's income is based on what I'm gonna buy it for, what I'm gonna spend to renovate, and what rent I'm going to get in the future. It's not really a cap rate, but it's an expected rate of return. It's virtually the same definition of a cap rate, but it's a projection. And that actual number, the numbers are all they're in my documents anyway, but the actual projection was 6%. Because the renovation costs were $113,000. And the projections on the income were higher than the income actually received. So that was their plan going in, I'm gonna shoot for 6%. They didn't get it. And earlier I handed up that market value definition.
Yep.
So when you start doing stuff like that, you get into creative financing. So if an appraiser tries to tell you a renovation sale is valid, they violated the standards. And if an assessor tries to tell you they violated the IAAO standards, the only sale you can use is when you have two parties get together and they buy it for their in-place income. Costs after sale is a different factor. But in this case, we knew it was renovated right away after purchase. $113,000 was the cost. However, there was a credit going back on that of $2,600 applied at a later date. So their overall capital investment was approximately 1.36.
Which is peanut.
And then I have the projections on their income would indicate they were shooting for 6%. Now, so what the difference we're looking for is not the difference of the sale price plus the cost, but the fact that they never met their projections, and it is what it is. So because I had to listen to this very good discussion, I have different numbers here. I didn't prepare this statement, but the actual NOI that came about after the renovation was $54,152. Now, I told you they projected 6%, and they didn't get 6%. So I don't even know what that number is, but if we're using actuals, let's use actuals. So 54,152 at 6% is 902,533, rounded to 903,000. So that would be my reading of the statements, the target cap and the actual versus, target cap based on projected revenue versus the actual experience. Now, there's nothing tricky or shifty or unscrupulous about this, because with any renovation project, you're not seeing the results immediately. You're looking for your absorption and stabilization. So down the road, this should improve. And the investments aren't made for next year. They're made generally for a 10-year window. So in any sophisticated group, and this is actually a fairly sophisticated investor, is they will do 10-year projections, and then they'll look at their number at the end, and then that's when they're cashing in and establishing the value. Right now, we're just dealing with an interim number. Sort of like buying, what do they call them? Is it called a sinking bond? Where right away you get a crappy rate of return, a bad rate of return, and then after a few years, you know. Anyway, 903,000 is actual income, actual planned cap. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Martins?
No questions, thank you.
Marcel?
So you wouldn't call $100,000 a major renovation?
No, it would be a above guideline increase. Prior to renovation, the number was 107,700 for income. After renovation, potential was 126. So that would indicate an above guideline increase application. And with those, of course, you can set your rent rate at, say you get approval for a 17% rent hike, so you register that rate, but then you can charge your tenant less, and that's why I'm saying it sometimes takes 10 years to hit that target. But remember, we can't assess the future, we can only assess what happened.
I might as well ask a question while they're looking up some stuff. What can you tell us about the sale in 2015?
Well, there was, it was part of a larger portfolio and an acquisition period for this group. So, you see the brown flyer folders here? Brown is this group. This is a different group. So we have, Victory Place was one of their acquisitions. Allno was one of their acquisitions, and you'll see that there's the dates are similar. 336 Ward was one of their acquisitions. So they, I should probably check those dates on here too.
So, Mr. Newfield, did this particular sale fall into your group?
No, because we don't track renovation sales. We don't include them. Because it's only shows one half
Well,
of.
then you should have two cap rates set.
No,
You should have two. You should have ones that are renovated and ones that, you know, are purchased with the idea that they're going to be renovated.
Years ago, Altus was taking 234 Ronald to the municipal board, and they had asked for our help in testifying. And so Don White went down, I went down, and we tried to explain to the board that renovation schemes aren't real cap rates. They're projects, and you can't mix them. But Winnipeg at that point was everything was a renovation project. So I think the assessor had a choice at that point, either look at those or do a per door value. Now, we've run out of renovation projects. So at least now we can finally get into ones that are actually focused on real income. So we can start the proper thing, disregard the renovation sales. They're not cap rates. If you can show the cost cost of renovation, projected income, you can show that as a comment on cap rates, because it's not a real cap rate, right, because it never happened. But say, this is this is the target. Earlier, I told you about Ward, the first building, we did the same workup with them. We took projected rents and costs, and they were targeting 8%, which turned out after the first few years to stabilize at a 6% rate of return. They're not, but then the other property, 336 Ward, which sold across the street, for in-place income capped at 5.5. So that's what we have to try to do to make some sense out of this. And included in here, of course, on page, I never got around to this. We thought we were gonna go a lot quicker than this, but we didn't, you know, I think we're shooting for enough. Page 24, the mortgage equity.
Yep.
And the reason we do the income approach, primary reason is to guarantee mortgage financing. So that's why cap rates are so important, because if you take the NOI off a property and the value, you want the NOI to pay the mortgage. And for years, this is required in any income approach. Just do a mortgage equity. Prove to me you can match the mortgage. And at page 24, as a sample, these are normal rates, not CMHC rates, not favorable financing, but it's also not syndicated lending. 4.5 interest to 7% ratio means you need a return of 5.4% to pay your mortgage. And that's the key when you take this to a bank. So if someone brought an appraisal to a bank and said, hey, I'm capping this at 4.9%, Mr. Banker, here's my appraisal, they'd say, go find another lender. Because we can't lend you money because you can't, your NOI doesn't pay the mortgage, right? That's what I'm just trying to explain, is that every board is that take out this artificiality of cap rates. They have to be compared against the real world. Can you pay your mortgage? And if you can't, you got another form of highest and best use. You're basing something on market appreciation, like the Lower Mainland, Vancouver, and Toronto, where they're not doing it on income, they're doing it on anticipated appreciation of the asset, without borrowing money, of course, or from Canada.
We could talk about this all day.
You brought it up.
I know, okay. So let me just ask you one question. To develop a cap rate,
Yes.
you take NOI
Yes.
divided by the sale price.
You
Gives your
take
cap rate.
stabilized NOI based on normal operation.
So,
Like, anyone who's doing renovating is kicked out half their tenants, right?
Yeah.
So you're not getting anything real.
okay, but that's how you calculate
Yeah, I agree.
cap rate.
I agree.
Okay.
But they would use those numbers, they haven't kicked them out yet. They haven't started the project. So they would use the numbers that was existing.
Well, you
Yeah,
get.
but they're not gonna buy the
get
project on the
into-
basis of $400
But they're
rents.
not
They're
gonna-
buying it because they can turn them into $700 rents with an investment of a couple $100,000.
But they're not gonna go to the bank and say,
No, what they're gonna do is they're gonna go to the bank and they're gonna show them a pro forma, and they're gonna say,
Yeah.
this is my rents are going
Yeah.
to be, what my rents are going to be,
Yeah.
this is what I'm gonna
The
pay for it.
potential, the
and-
potential.
And this is what I'm investing in. Yes.
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 That's 6% for this property.
Yeah, but, you know,
But I've done these appraisals, I've done a lot of these
Yeah.
appraisals for a prospective value for financing. This is how we do them. This is, sorry, I'm getting a little frustrated. This is
Don't get
something
frustrated.
I do a lot,
You're having fun.
right?
You're actually learning something.
This is an area where I am qualified as an expert in, rather than the guy who just appears in front of you and argues the same thing every time.
all right, let's conclude, anything further on either,
I'm going to,
summary?
I'm just gonna ask again to be an expert witness next week for court, you know?
we wanna be expert witnesses.
okay, let's go to the
I got,
last.
Rocky's gotta make his presentation yet.
Does it?
I've got my.
Oh,
No,
he did, I guess.
he did that.
He gave us the numbers, yes.
Yeah, give us this figure. Okay. So, summary, either party?
No, thank you.
Okay, let's go to the last one on the docket, number 7, which is 1230 Pembina Highway. Ms. Martins, whenever you're ready. Sorry to be
Told you 5 o'clock.
No, I had put my bed on 3:01.
Oh, we're getting close to
Alright.
that.
All right.
This is file number 194606, roll number 0309 0000000. 1230 Pembina Highway, assessed value is $1,168,000. This is an apartment building, one building, 3 stories, built in 1953 with 14 suites and 10 outdoor parking spots. Our suite mix is 8 one-bedroom and 6 two-bedroom, giving us 14 units with an average monthly rent per unit at $780.82. We have a vacancy rate at 2.4, expense rate at 53.48%, and capitalization rate at 5.1, which gives us our $1,168,000. We have rental comparables on page 3 that range from $762 to $892. The income information starts on page, is on page 7 and 8. With a picture and a map on page 9. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Newfield?
Same question, is this model?
Yes, it is.
And again, I'm just looking, 1953, as the model goes, this seems to be close to the same numbers applied on newer properties here today, so I'm wondering where the boundaries are. You haven't, since the last time I asked the question, figured that out?
You know, I haven't figured that out since the last
Okay.
time, but thank you for checking.
Okay, thank you, those are my questions.
I thank you. Mr. Rondo? Rondo, please.
I'm just looking at their income on here. Is that a negative? Or is my eyes?
Oh, on there,
On page 7.
it does look like their net operating income is a negative.
What's that number for expenses? $1,506,000.
No, 157,913. Although for this, I'm not sure what the other, under expenses is for 16,852.
Yeah. $128,000 shows the income. Which is close. Marketing. That's not your number. And then your cap rate, again, we're down at 5.0. Why is it, when, it used to be so much closer, and I know your model,
But if you look at their maintenance and repair, their maintenance and repair is, what is that,
Yeah.
89,125, so that's more than $6,000 per unit. That's a little on the high side.
Your cap rate at 5.10.
Yes.
Again, looking at the Colliers and the CBRE and the other one, on the low rise, the lowest they've got is 5, up to 6, 5.75. You end at, well, you 730 on the, over here, but you're saying in the 88th percentile, there's 5.3 and then 4.9. Did you change that schematic or something, or those numbers?
Me, personally?
The model. The model.
This was taken from the model, and that's with, switching over from doing, quarter points to doing a more fluid system, so we didn't have big drops, because a quarter point can be a big difference in value.
Okay. Got no further questions, Mr. Chair.
I have none either. Mr. Newfield, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yes, that is correct. There was a very large expense category. It was, I believe it was windows. There's two issues with building expenses. One is that, the other is a very inconsistent accounting system. At the bottom of our page 1, for example, we showed you what the expenses have been every year, and they go up, they go down, and they also, if you note, include interest in their statement as well. So they give the city the numbers that they have, and without editing, so unfortunately, we've got a bit of deciphering to do. What we did is, of course, we eliminated the interest from that expense side, and then we adjusted the repair and maintenance from, and that's the bottom left-hand side. The R&M of 89,125, we changed that to 21,000, which was 1,500 per unit, and that resulted in a $68,000 change in the NOI along with the interest. So we stabilized on that basis, 2017 basis, which an income NOI 55,512, fairly consistent with 2016, and not much different than the model has. They're at 59. We've stabilized at 55. So the major difference is capitalization rate. And like most of the properties today on the small side, this has got a very visible location on Pembina Highway. Again, this wouldn't likely meet our Collier's cap rate study. It wouldn't get into our report, this type of property. And then that, as I mentioned, the low rises were 5.5 to 6.5, and that's why we put in 6.75 here on that income. That's 822. Last year's decision, in case somebody wants to know, was, looks like the same chairperson as today.
You must have been wrong then.
I don't know. You know, income isn't usually an issue here, and a cap rate of 6.25%. That's what the last decision was. So I think it should be higher, but it definitely should be higher than 5.1. Thank you. That's my presentation.
I thank you. Ms. Martins?
So I'm going, is it safe to assume that some of the expenses that should be amortized over an extended period of time, that that's not being done with the inconsistent accounting?
Well,
Like the windows shouldn't be like a one-year expense, they should be kind of spread out over time.
yeah, there are certain ones that should and certain that shouldn't, and what you should be looking is at the expected life of something, and if it's exceeds a reasonable period, then you call it capital. And if it's windows is debatable, but likely it depends on what sort of window. If you've got the cheap one, no, then you're gonna have to replace it 15 years from now. A roof is always gonna be amortized in a long life. But then, say you repair a foundation, you generally would capitalize that, or, well, it would depend on the nature of the repair. Like, just trying to think, long life, there's long life, short life, and medium life lived. And each one of those you treat on a detailed analysis, you would work it out. So you could potentially have a 30-year amortization, a 20-year, a 10-year, but the short-lived items would be immediately expensed as suite turnover, because you're always turning over a suite, and you could turn over 10 one year and 3 the next year, but you're doing the same level of work. So the way we deal with that, with all of these expenses, is if we know there's a long-lived item, we pull it out. If we think it should be amortized over a long term, we'll put it back in at that amortization level. Other than that, we average out. And to try to get, a 3-year average is generally what we use. And then take a look at what's happened in the previous 10 years as well. So in this case, we knew that there were windows. We instead of putting 89,000, we have 21,000.
Okay, thank you.
Well, you must have done this one, because you didn't make any changes.
I believe I was brought this one for a review, and say, how can I put in a negative NOI? And I said, yeah, that'd be pretty funny, depends who's on the board that day. And we asked for a refund back from the city. No, but I'm always in touch with this specific landlord, and I knew from last year that he put in windows.
I'm good.
And we made an error here, we said 8 parking, but it is 10 parking, so it is under the amount for zoning.
So, Mr. Newfield, you're sticking with the 6.75?
Yeah, I don't, I think it's reasonable, you know. I would point out that the last decision we had at 6.25, there is a strong indication it should be higher, and we've included our Collier's report. Now, remember, this is the unedited report before we fixed the closing cost issue, but we have actually tracked a quarter point higher from 16 to 18 in the market. If you look at our key indicators and look at page 17 and 18, you'll notice our bottom line number actually increased a quarter point. So we have noted that, and I think that it's been helped by we don't have to, the absence of the conversion sales, and even though we try to edit them out, they still get through from time to time, dealing more with in-place income.
I thank you. Summation, neither party?
I don't see
Do we
that,
go long or not?
I don't see that paper with your name on it here, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, you didn't put it, okay.
No.
All right.
I think that concludes our hearing, so Mr. Newfield, thank you for your presentations and results. As soon as our secretary can get her speedy old hands going. And
Yes, and I was just gonna say something as soon as the microphone was off,
Okay.
it was funny, but.
And Ms. Martins, thank you.